Are you excited for tonight? Lucy whispered across the aisle to the student that sat next to her, while she scrawled strange symbols over the open page of her notebook. Yeah, I guess. I don't know why we can't just go see a movie or something. Maybe we could just go trick-or-treat? Abby replied in a hushed tone. Lucy gave her friend a sour look. I mean, I know we're a little old for it, but we could still have fun, right? Isn't it just about hanging out with friends? Come on, Grandma, it'll be fun. We'll have to meet Marissa down at that park thing tonight. Lucy gave Abby a determined nod, and the girls resumed listening to their insipid old teacher, Mr. Milton, give an excruciatingly lifeless lecture about something to do with ancient history. Abby glanced over to Lucy, who mockingly nodded her head like she was about to fall asleep, when their teacher snapped his fingers. Miss Landry, is the fall of the Babylonian Empire not thrilling enough to keep you awake and engaged? Milton asked in a dry tone. Sorry. I promise you, class, this gets far more interesting when we start to explore the diffusion and modifications of cuneiform throughout other cultures. Before long, the last bell of the day had rang, echoing in the halls as students filtered out of their classrooms with a fervor. Wallflowers and nerds hung out at the hallway's edge, glued to unused lockers. Jocks muscled everyone out of the way, cackling as they barreled toward the exits. Abby followed behind Lucy as the pair stepped into the crowded corridor and disappeared into a sea of bodies. Abby mimicked her friend's path almost exactly to keep up, as people headed for the doors pushed past her, shoving her around. She stumbled out into the bright sun and fresh air as the fall breeze slapped her squarely in the face. Are you going to Dylan's party tonight? Yeah, I don't know. That guy's kind of a jackass. Well, yeah, but his family's loaded. We might get some of those big candy bars if we go. Mr. Hanson, the hopelessly enthusiastic gym teacher, stood at the base of the stairs, frantically handing out flyers to any student gullible or polite enough to take one. His brown hair stuck to his sweat-covered forehead. He'd ran to the school's front from the gym, forgetting that he'd agreed to hand out flyers for some Halloween get-together the school was hosting at the park. Hope to see you guys there, he said with a gravelly voice as most students shirked off the burden, quietly throwing away their crumpled-up flyers as soon as he turned his back. As Lucy and Abby hurried past him, he turned and stopped Abby, allowing numerous students to slip by undetected. She received a few mouthed thank yous as they rushed past him. He turned around to see the cluster of students that had avoided him. Oh, damn it, he muttered, a hint of defeat in his voice. Anybody who didn't get a flyer, please ask a buddy to give you the the details. He turned back to Abby. Hey, good luck out there, warrior. I hope everything works out for you at home, Mr. Hanson said with a questionable bow. Abby crossed her arms uncomfortably as Lucy stared at her. Yeah. Have fun at this school thing tonight, Mr. Hanson. Oh, here, he said, handing each girl a flyer. Try to make it if you can. It means a lot for a student to take an interest in their school and community, he said with a few falsely sage head nods. We'll try. Have a nice day, Mr. Hanson, Abby said while she wandered off with Lucy. What was that about? Lucy asked, a touch of curiosity in her voice. What? Abby responded, looking at the wrinkled flyer. Your home life? Is Mr. Hanson your guidance counselor now? Lucy's words cut sharply into Abby as she nonchalantly studied the street. Come on, Lucy. You think I go around telling people about my home life? The pair were quiet for a moment as they departed the school grounds. It's not exactly fun to show up late to school because Richard's too wasted to drive you. Does that sound like something I'm proud of? Lucy stayed silent, still not looking at Abby. I was late to gym, and he asked why. Believe me, I don't want to tell the gym teacher about my problems at 8 a.m. but I'm not going to get written up for being late. That just makes things worse. They walked in silence for several seconds. Yeah. Abby shook her head in disappointment as they continued onward. Neither one said much for several more blocks, until their paths diverged. Make sure to bring something valuable for the seance tonight. It's gotta have meaning. It can't just be some junk you have lying around. I still don't understand why we can't just do something normal. Why do we have to try to contact some spirit? Abby asked while she crossed her arms and tilted her head. I told you there's no trying with this. I've talked to it before. And besides, what better time to get in touch with the other side than Halloween night? When she spoke, she flashed a devious grin and wiggled her fingers obnoxiously at Abby, who averted her gaze and sighed. I guess. Alright, I'll meet you at the park in a while. Are you sure you don't want to just hang out there instead? God, you're such a nervous mess, Abby, Lucy replied as she brushed her dyed black hair out of her eyes. It'll be fine. We meet there, then head for the woods. Abby nodded before they parted ways. She walked through the town that rested right next to the school, heading home. She'd pop in just long enough to tell her mom where she was going and to grab an item, if only to humor Lucy. Her shoes kicked up gravel as she walked. She thought about what she could bring for tonight. Maybe her old diary? No, that's stupid. Baby teeth? Ew, what? She pondered as cars drove past. It had to be something that wouldn't embarrass her. Wait, she had it. She knew exactly the item to bring. She quickened her pace and hurried home. On approach, she noticed only her mother's car in the driveway. Abby breathed a sigh of relief as she stepped up to the door. She stared a moment at the fading green, now flaking off the siding. Thoughts rushed into her mind of when her and Dad first painted it together. She held the bucket while he painted, even if it meant taking twice as long to finish. It was fun, getting to do that together. Tripping with the bucket and having to wash half a gallon of paint off with a cold garden hose, not quite as enjoyable. But that felt like a lifetime ago now. Maybe in some way or another, that was true. Abby found her mother in the kitchen as she hurried inside, washing dishes from the piled-up sink for tonight's dinner. Mom? Abby asked as she stepped onto dingy linoleum flooring. Her mother turned around. Hi, Abby. How was school, sweetheart? She looked tired, Abby noticed. Worn down like she hadn't slept in weeks. She'd stopped working for a while after Abby's father died, and once she'd met Richard, that was all but sealed. Here and there, she worked in a small accounting office near the edge of town that mostly dealt with other local businesses. But whatever her mother had been enduring, she hadn't been sleeping well because of it. School was good. Would it be alright if I hung out with my friends tonight? I'll be home before curfew. Abby's mother rubbed at her eye, her loose fist almost entirely covering the dark bags that underlined her pupils. Of course, sweetie. Just make sure to grab some dinner when you get home. And be careful out tonight. Make sure you wear a jacket. With a quiet thank you, Abby walked down the carpeted hallway toward her room. She stepped into the cramped, musty dwelling. When her father was alive, she'd thought of her room as cozy. The two of them would always build fortresses out of her bedding, and often out of his own and the couch cushions, much to the dismay of her mother. They'd hide away and watch movies, or tell scary stories with the lights off. Her mother would smack her hands against the door to scare them. It was all so picturesque. Now it was claustrophobic. It nearly choked her to death every time she found herself inside it. She spent so much time beyond the walls of her house. Some days it felt like she was a stranger in her own home, even in her own room. She pulled open the top drawer of a dresser that sat nestled in the corner. Abby picked up a novelty snow globe and examined it as its fake snowflakes and glitter showered down over the Golden Gate Bridge. Her father had bought it for her on one of their family vacations to San Francisco. A cheap touristy trinket didn't mean much to her back then, but it was one of the few things she still had from him. She unzipped her maroon backpack and gently placed the globe inside. She closed that drawer and made her way out of her room, shutting the door behind her. Being out of that space felt like having 10 pounds lifted from her shoulder. Abby walked down the hall, headed for the front door. "See you later, Mom," she said as she reached the exit. She was mere feet from leaving when a man in a grease-stained, olive-green work shirt stepped up to the entrance, visible through the oval-shaped window in the middle of their white door. He stared in at her as he opened it and entered. Abby took several steps back, half to let him in, the other half to be as far away from him as possible. He shut the door behind him, his expression fixed on Abby. "Hi, Richard."
"It's sir to you, kid. Only my poker buddies call me Richard. And last I checked, I ain't ever seen you at one of my games,"
Richard uttered, his voice raspy like he'd been chewing on gravel and cigarette butts his entire life. Abby tried to avoid looking him in the eyes.
"Where you running off to now, kid?"
"I'm going to hang out with my friends, sir," Abby stated, struggling to maintain a false air of confidence.
"You gonna be out all night?"
Richard took a few steps forward. Abby wanted to step back, but she knew he would catch on if she did.
"Don't want to have to come looking for you."
Richard took a final step up to Abby, who continued to stay motionless, not looking at him. He put his hands on the shoulders of her navy blue sweatshirt and squeezed tightly. Pain crept through Abby's arms while the acrid stench of grease and cigarettes fused to his shirt, burned her nostrils and swirled in her skull.
"You feeling better today?"
he asked with an abrasive, annoyed tone.
"Would have been plenty happy to drop you off at school."
She could barely muster the strength to nod her head. The discomfort was almost impossible to hide. "Yes, sir. Fresh air definitely helped." He stepped closer to her. He inhaled deeply, exhaling a hint of smoke into her face, its sickeningly sweet scent eliciting a disgusted, if subdued, reaction as it stung her eyes. A dim bulb casting light into the hallway above them flickered in time with his voice.
"Just wish you'd make things a little easier on me. I work so hard to provide for the two of you, and all I get in return is an ungrateful little brat. I think you ought to clean your act up and be more agreeable to me and your mom. Maybe you just need to learn to respect your parents."
He patted her once on the shoulder, then let go. She slipped past him, reaching out for the door before she'd even gotten close to it, but Richard turned and grabbed her left shoulder again. She froze instantly, a surge of hatred erupting through her like a firing pin.
"Kid, let's keep your poor mother out of these kinds of matters. I don't want to worry her more than she already is,"
he commanded, donning an eerie scowl. That dull glow above him spit down intimidating shadows that masked his sunken features and grizzled expression with darkness. This man never appeared friendly, but somehow this was the most sinister she'd ever seen him. "Okay," she muttered, her breathing shaky.
"You remember what I said a few weeks back?"
Abby nodded.
"Why don't you remind me?"
Her breath grew shallower as she tried to speak. "Bad things happen to people who walk around airing their problems." In that moment, all she wanted to do was rush out the door and never come back. She could feel her own heartbeat intensifying, but an image of her mother's face, forlorn and anguished, kept her glued in place.
"I suppose you do listen to me. Have fun with your friends,"
he said, watching her as she opened the door.
"Richard, is that you?"
"Yeah, she's came loose. Figured I'd tie 'em up now instead of tomorrow morning."
She readjusted her sweatshirt and tried to shake off her discomfort as she headed for the park. A quarter mile from her house, she broke, and tears began to stream down her face. She never cried because of him. She made it a point that he would never make her feel so small again. The way she felt when he grabbed hold of her, it was helplessness. Abby stopped walking, and leaned against a stone wall that stood high above her. She wept, picking at her fingernails to try to relieve her stress. Something about the sight of the chipped polish on them made it hurt even more. Why did it have to be her? Her mother moved on so quickly after her dad died. Didn't she hurt too? She couldn't make sense of any of it. She was just a high schooler. A kid. All of this stuff was beyond her. Tears continued to pour down her face while she gasped for air. She looked around, hoping nobody was nearby. The world just froze around her as she cried. Birds fell quiet, the wind slowed, and the sky grew somber with clouds. So much that she had bottled up for so long erupted simultaneously. She pressed her hands to her face to hide from everything. That darkness was soothing, in a way. Memories of her and her dad in their couch fortress flashed in that place. She cried harder because of them, but it didn't feel like a helpless kind of crying. Abby didn't know what it was, but her breathing slowly steadied, and she wiped her face off. Everything seemed to start back up when that haze departed. As Abby neared the park, she could see the place filling up with town residents and other students. People crowded around a cotton candy truck and booths packed with assorted trinkets. Noise and light filled space around her while she passed by a number of parked cars just outside one of the entrances. The one stuck out to her, a jet black sedan, gleaming and well kept, spotless from a distance, and currently being approached by a finely dressed pair, a blonde man and a red-headed woman, their monochrome garb nearly identical. To any conspiracy net worth their salt, these two were G-men, or G-people, rather, government lackeys, plain as day, dispatched under dubious reasoning. But Abby's mind, presently a discordant symphony of angst and sadness and stress, pegged it as weird, and a little more. Unable or unwilling to deconstruct her perception any further, she waded into the busy location awaiting her, saddled with unease. A live band playing nearby started to wind down their song as a man's voice echoed through a microphone across the attendees' heads. Feedback whined as he fumbled with the mic, eliciting winces from everyone, especially those closest. Aromatic advertisements drifted along rolling breezes carried away from food vendors stationed across the grounds, captivating Abby as she surveilled droves of people in search of familiar faces. At last, Lucy's iconic frown and dark, messy makeup grabbed hold of Abby across clusters of bodies, and she made her way over. Lucy began to weave in and around attendees, her other friend Marissa following behind as the trio met up. "You have your offering?" Abby inhaled. "Yep, I got it." "Great, let's get going." The group departed the park as echoes of live music resumed, and made their way toward an aging, abandoned mall that sat about 10 minutes from the town's border. An ocean of forest crowded against its backside, suffocating the concrete paradiso now left to rot. "So, what exactly is our plan here?" Abby asked, adjusting the straps on her backpack. "I've told you this like 3 times already. We're reaching out to the other side." "Right, but what does that actually mean?" "It means we're gonna talk to a spirit, or ghost or whatever." Frustrated, Abby continued to poke at Lucy. "Does this spirit have a name?" "Yeah, I think its actual name is Otspa or something." "Otspa?" Marissa chimed in. "Aren't spirits supposed to have human names?" "Well, I don't really think Otspa is a normal spirit per se," Lucy replied tepidly. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Oh my god, don't worry about it, Grandma. All I really know is that this works, because I've talked to it before." "You've done this before? Well, what did you do last time?" "Jesus, Abby, can't you just trust that I know what I'm doing?" "I do, it's just if all you're gonna do is bitch at me for trying to make Halloween a little more fun, then maybe we should just turn around and go home." "I never really signed up for a seance. I just wanted to, watch a movie and hang out." Abby replied dejectedly. Lucy sighed as audibly as she could and shook her head. It's always a joy to have your input, Abby. Abby furrowed her brow, glaring at the back of Lucy's head as they walked alongside the mall. We should be able to get through right there, Marissa said as she pointed to a split in the rusty chain-link fence that ran behind the old mall to separate it from the encroaching woods. Lucy held open its decaying metal for the others to crawl in, then followed after them. Firmly in the woods, there was a distinctly discomforting feeling to this place. Not sinister or foreboding, just off. As it filled Abby's chest, pulsing over and over faintly to signal her, she brushed it aside as anticipation of an uncertain outcome. They headed deeper inside, stepping over gnarled roots and dead branches as the last minutes of evening light vanished behind the thick overhead canopy. The three girls walked and walked and walked. This should be far enough. Get your offerings out. Beyond the uneasiness that accompanied the deep forest, an unseen force laid claim to this small clearing, if only temporarily. The trio dropped down to their knees and each opened up their backpacks. Lucy pulled candles and a lighter from hers, placing them down in a triangular pattern in the middle of the group. With each wick's lighting, that feeling grew stronger in Abby's chest. What had appeared to her as some sort of warning now felt so much more tangible. The energy of this space had started to transform as the candles flickered against a dull breeze. The air felt thinner around Abby, and a sensation unlike anything she'd ever felt entered her, a powerful yet silent buzzing inside her skull, a numbness of sorts. Her eyes settled on those fragile flames in the circle, and it became clear that some presence was attuning itself to her, not the reverse. Lucy took a small bag of salt and poured it carefully in the shape of a symbol within the frame of candles, leaving just enough room for their offerings. What does this do exactly? Something struck Abby about this other girl. She too appeared unsure of Lucy's mission. It's the actual summoning materials. I just need to add marks for everyone here. Then we can get started. Abby's eyes remained fixated on the candle's gentle wavering as her hands rubbed the snow globe in her lap. She ran her thumbs over the bumpy, textured surface of its clay base. She could feel the narrow, deep scratches in the glass. It was comforting, like her dad was still with her. What'd you bring? Marissa asked Abby. A snow globe? You do remember I told you to bring something of value? Lucy asked, as she spray-painted several more large symbols on the ground around the site. Yeah, it's, my dad gave this to me before he passed. Lucy offered no follow-up, but her face was transparently flush with mild embarrassment. What about you? This ring I bought when my family went to Italy, Marissa answered. Lucy finished her preparations and returned to her position. Her faded sneakers pushed into the dirt while she sat down to rifle through a backpack. She pulled out a small jar and a large leather-bound book. It looked distressed, worn from years of attention. Lucy set the jar beside her as she thumbed through the book. Is that your item? Abby asked, her eyes locked on the jar of substances. Yeah, a bunch of stuff I pocketed from chemistry. Turns out school is actually good for something. Isn't it supposed to be something valuable? Marissa chimed in. It says in the book, certain materials are... She trailed off as her eyes scanned a page, her finger running along it. Raw elements of an alchemical nature appear to be sufficiently powerful in the summoning ritual, as much as any material good. The breeze that carried past them bristled harder as Lucy read through the book. What's that book? This? Lucy replied, turning and flipping the object around in her hands. She cleared her throat as she stalled, casting a feeling of concern over Abby. The girl furrowed her brow and waited while Lucy flipped over a few pages. I, found it while I was out walking a few weeks ago. Yeah, didn't you find it in the woods or somewhere creepy like that? Lucy suddenly widened her eyes at Marissa and followed up with a glare, wishing that detail had remained secret. Marissa replied with a look of embarrassment. "You found it in the woods?" Abby's mouth hung wide with horror. "Yeah, it's like, whatever, It was, like, partially buried. I tripped over it and dug it out, and it was this sweet-ass, creepy tome thing." Okay, she proclaimed. "Let's get started. You two ready?" Without waiting for a confirmation, Lucy began to read aloud from the pages. "We, the inhabitants of the corporeal plane, reach out to the space beyond space, in search of communion with any who will listen." Abby wore a motionless, nervous expression as she watched Lucy. "We offer you now cords that may tether you to our plane." Lucy twisted open the jar with one hand and poured it between the candles, motioning for the others to put forth their offerings. "Idve, mortis, Kithal, Ardano, Hora, Duravis." As her rigidly pronounced words danced through the black air, they struck a spark attractive enough for something to see from the other side. Wind swept through old, gnarled trees, flooding through branch and brush, rustling the foliage that surrounded the girls. Yet the candle's flames were unfazed by the gust. They suddenly dimmed, then intensified their glow. Soon, a blinding white flicker stood atop each wax pillar, stark against this forest's growing shadows. "We submit these tokens in exchange for a favor. An unnatural intervention in this plane," Lucy continued as the wind raged on. "Irith, Null, Kanan, Ormi Viste." Lucy's voice rose to battle the force that whipped past the girls, before an abrupt calm blanketed the space. The wind's violence had halted, and the flames were now a meager whimper, as if sapped of their energy. Hushed noise filled the trio's ears, swirling around them. Mostly inaudible, whispers, reaching out as ambassadors of some great old force's arrival. It weighed heavily on their souls. Abby wanted to speak, to ask if it had really worked, but her nerves paralyzed her, and she already knew the answer to her question. Marissa looked around the stilled woods. Even the crickets' low chirps had fled. Only total silence lingered to occupy this place. While Lucy stared into the unending darkness that surrounded the trio, her voice resumed. Archaic words once again penetrated soupy air, allowing a beacon to form around them. "Volpum mori thava," Lucy said in a wavering tone. "Utum array miral." She continued to chant, hopeful the spirit would hear her request and return. Seconds ticked by, a potent concern filling the girls' minds. Suddenly, a rhythmic noise faded into earshot of Abby. Regular, repetitive, a heartbeat almost invisible to any except those already looking. A raspy, rippling voice wandered in from somewhere unseen, filling the space around them and permeating their minds. We require your service. We bring offerings, charged with power." When Lucy's request crashed into the night's air, an immense pressure befell them, like being submerged in a vast ocean. Abby's shoulders felt so much heavier as her eyes scanned the space. Something grabbed her attention. 4 pinprick-sized dots of light floating in the deepest black of the forest, so far away. As Abby fixated on them, they approached. No, they were already near. Growing, intensifying. Shining twinkles began to spur off the dots as they slowly reshaped into orbs, bigger than golf balls. Just suspended in air, a dull hue of yellow, cloaked in white. They were stationary, that seemed to twist as a pale circle wrapped around the inside of each orb, coming to settle in an equilateral form. As Abby and Marissa watched in stunned silence, it struck Abby what exactly she was looking at. These were eyes. Those pale circles, now small and centered within each orb, ghostly irises that drifted toward Lucy.
Who of this plane requests my interference?
That raspy voice returned, but it felt different now. Like taking any kind of shape had given it a better foothold in this reality. I got something last time, so it's only fair that someone else gets a go, Lucy remarked as she looked at her friends. Marissa was speechless. Neither she nor Abby could quite grasp what they were seeing. How could this be real? What was this, a demon? That sort of answer dredged a litany of questions that paralyzed Abby.
What offerings are brought to bear?
Nobody spoke, but it seemed the eyes were now observing the items everyone had set out.
Essence, materials, little of substance.
This voice came from somewhere far from the eyes, disconnected. It made a low, gurgling noise.
Something unique, mortal, unconstructed, raw emotion.
Abby's eyes very noticeably snapped to her snow globe. In the past, whenever she had remembered this, or found it while digging for something else, she tried to suppress its memories, the things that came back up with it. As she stared, those thoughts exploded past that mental barrier. She had no time to shield herself from them, and they once more dominated her mind.
Worthwhile canvas. Tell me, what is your desire?
A single name flashed briefly in the darkness of Abby's mind. She couldn't help it. There would be no candidate better suited. If this was as real as it seemed, he needed to go.
A mortal soul is a high price. Coming, going.
Abby's eyes jumped to those orbs. It knew. Before her words had even been spoken to tangibility, this thing knew. Was this real? Was it in her head?
But it can be done.
She swallowed her spit, which felt like thumbtacks going down. I want you to kill Richard Brandt. There was a silence for a few seconds following her request, but something grew, extended from those orbs as they rose through the air. In all directions, the darkness, even darker than the night that surrounded the girls. Abby and Marissa both reeled back, still kneeling, but ever unsure of its intent. It loomed over them now, no longer shapeless, something tremendous and dark, radiating evil, intense hatred and anger. Simply observing it made Abby's blood boil with channeled shadow. A detail that evaded her attention, a sharp yellow glow set upon her own eyes. Her pupils burned with a strange supernatural essence as they twinkled in an ancient color, a profound feeling of sadness thrashing deep within. It felt like every moment of despair, every tear shed in her brief life was being pulled out of her mind, distilled into a pure, powerful force, one which this thing would direct toward her target. The deepest pit of her soul had opened up, an image of herself reflected in its caustic maw. She would no longer be a victim of fear. The snow globe exploded violently, spraying water and launching glass outward that struck each girl. A small, jagged piece nicked her hands and sliced her across her right cheek, quickly dripping blood down toward her jawline as she returned to reality. The pale light of an older flat-screen TV cast across Abby's dingy living room, swallowed by the void of night.
Can't you believe it? I just had to see it with my own eyes, folks. It chops, dices, slices, and yes, even peels. Potatoes, carrots, onions, peppers, apples, it doesn't matter. The quick dice clap chopper will make short work of any ingredient you throw at it.
A late-night infomercial quietly filled the dark space as Richard slept restlessly in a musty, aged recliner, stained the shade of rust. He snored while that TV flicked between dim and bright images, its light wavering while piercing darkness cast over their walls. When the screen cut to a dimmer shot, the recliner's shadow began to leak, rising into a tall shape that stretched up to the ceiling. A bright white suddenly flashed as the TV returned to a lighter shot of the ad set, and that shadow was gone. Richard stirred as the infomercial flashed a "Buy It Now" message on screen in yellow lettering. He snorted and convulsed as he awoke groggily. His eyes were bleary and blinded by the TV's brightness. Just when the man writhed in his chair to sit up, he felt a sharp pain drive through his chest. He leaned forward, clutching at the piercing sensation below his dirty green flannel. Frantically, his fingers wormed beneath it to grip a stained white shirt. The breath he drew grew shallow, and a numbness had set in on his left shoulder, working its way over him. He desperately gasped for air as he struggled to stand. Reaching down for the recliner's lever, a faint shimmering illuminated his features from a sliver in space, just ahead of him, remaining even as the TV went dark.
This revolutionary new tool can be yours for just 2 easy payments of $19.99. Call or text now. But don't wait, this offer won't last forever. And if you call in the next 30 minutes, we'll even throw in the Quick Dice Blade Sharpener for free. That's right, folks, a $10 value, absolutely free. Quick Dice Co. is not responsible for any fatalities that may occur during improper usage of our device.
Those hollow words consumed Richard's fracturing mind as he keeled forward and wheezed out quietly, his mouth agape and his body motionless.
It is sealed,
The voice said, now distinctly coming from that dark shape. A warm sensation grew in Abby's palm like holding her hand to a stove burner. The heat radiated from an unseen source, and suddenly surged into a stinging sensation that overwhelmed the flesh of her forearm. Ow! She turned her hand over. A symbol branded her flesh, searing its alien shape into a permanent access point for some other place. More than Lucy or Marissa, this being, this other side had attuned to her, and in her agreement with them, became the doorway through which anything that needed to could pass between worlds. She studied its curves, its sudden sharp lines. It felt so natural, so earthly in its form, yet wholly unique among everything she'd laid eyes on in her life. Her breath quickened, a detail she unconsciously tried to mask from her companions. She was mortified seeing this imprint, but at the same time, some part of her, previously unknown, was intensely fascinated. A bridge to somewhere else, somewhere darker and deeper than those known to mankind. The void that accompanied the entity dissolved into the forest, those lingering orbs decreasing in size to mere motes, then disappearing entirely. When the ambient noise returned, insects and wind rushing to fill the vacated space, it didn't feel like the same woods they had entered. This place had been changed, touched by the other side. We thank you for your time, Lucy said as she leaned forward and blew out the candles, then started to pack up her ritual belongings. So now what? Lucy gripped her bag tightly and glared at Marissa. What's that supposed to mean? We're just supposed to go back to our normal lives? What is this? Yeah, that's it. You summon a demon and you just expect me to What, go home and have dinner with my parents like nothing happened? Why are you being such a princess about this, Marissa? Really? You summoned a fucking demon, are you insane?
So what? I've done it before. Only this time we actually did something serious with it.
Lucy, what the hell is on my hand? What is this? Abby flashed her palm at Lucy, who glanced at it, but appeared to quickly avert her eyes and move on from the subject. Marissa grabbed her ring and shot up as the other girls followed suit. You know what? I'm gonna make my own way home. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. Marissa turned and walked off the way the group had come, guided by her phone's flashlight. It's a little late for that now, Marissa. Lucy shook her head and turned to Abby, who was still fixated on the brand. Let's get out of here. It seemed the closer the trio got to the mouth of this forest, the lighter that weight over them became, a suffocating feeling taken away, allowing them to breathe as they stepped back out into the evening. Hey, let's go grab something to eat. I think there's a diner close by. Abby brushed off her sweatshirt and pants, trying to make herself look a bit nicer as the pair stepped into the restaurant. It was a small place, themed like an old hunting lodge. Taxidermied animals clung to the walls, and it stunk of stale coffee from long-gone patrons. It wasn't the kind of diner either girl would usually seek out, but right now, it brought a much-needed comfort to Abby's upset mind. God, I'm starving. I need to find a restroom. Lucy shrugged as Abby split off, snaking around the burgundy booths and sea of clashing wood grains. She stepped into the single-person ladies' room and flicked a dim light on, quickly turning the sink's handle to cold. Water rushed out, and she stuck her marked hand underneath the stream. It felt no different from normal, save for the chill on her skin. She pulled back and examined it, watching the bubbles slowly vanish to reveal that raised imprint still present on her flesh. It really was burned into her. Part of her. She just stared at the symbol. Fuck. She looked at herself in the mirror, almost in disbelief. Lucy scanned the diner's limited late-night menu as Abby slid in across from her, eliciting a creak from the old booth's seat. That was quick. Yeah, I don't know. Abby picked up her own menu off the table, soft amber light shining down from a lamp hanging over them. She read from its pages, but the peripheral view of that shape dominated her attention. So how long should I wait before you tell me what the fuck is on my hand? Lucy's eyes flicked up to Abby's hushed words, then back to the menu. She sighed and set it down, sifting through her bag for that weathered book. She dropped it on their table, thumbing over pages while Abby eyed her. Finally, Lucy landed on one, spinning the tome around and pressing her finger to its old page. Abby looked at it, then her palm. Lucy pulled the book back and read through a small handwritten section below the symbol's depiction. An afterthought, it appeared. It says it's the mark of a successful transaction. It appears somewhere on the person who deals with the summoned entity, typically fades within a month. Time may vary. Abby's eyes returned to her menu, staring blankly at the options. The brand wasn't permanent, but it was a warning that something might try to commune with her again, use the gateway that her request had formed to cross over. Just take a breath, okay? You'll get over it. This'll just be a fun memory in a few years. A peek behind the curtain, Lucy commented as she picked her menu back up. Abby's phone buzzed in her pocket. She exasperatedly pulled it out. Mom, it displayed with red and green buttons. She tapped answer and held the phone to her ear. Hi, Mom. I'll be home soon. Lucy looked at her over the top of her menu. What? Mom, slow down. What happened? She stared at Lucy while she listened to her mom's distressed speech through the phone, her eyes narrowing. In the background, she could faintly make out what sounded like sirens. Oh my god, I can't believe it. Lucy rubbed her fingertips tightly against the bumpy laminate of her menu as she listened. I'll be home soon, Mom. Abby looked at her phone, dropped the call. Her gaze drifted to Lucy, who was still studying her. Holy shit.